Hi, my name is Kathy, and I've been an FLL mentor for more than a decade.
My name is Dawn, and I've also been an FLL mentor for over a decade. And today we're really going to talk about, have a coach-to-coach chat about some of the challenges that present itself when working with kids and how sometimes that can be difficult.
That's right. Yeah, these are concepts that have come up across our decades of experience, and we just really want to share with you guys how the framework that we use to think about this. It's really being centered on a lot of the core values in FIRST. Inclusion, teamwork, we like to add empathy to that, and gracious professionalism.
And when we're dealing with challenging situations, that's really always what we want to go back to. That we always want to go back to inclusion and the idea that we're better when we hear different people's ideas. That teamwork means everybody working together. And that we need to be empathetic and we need to be listening and understanding others' points of view. But also about gracious professionalism, which I know, Kathy, you and I are really big fans of that idea of gracious professionalism in FIRST.
Yeah, gracious professionalism is when you compete really hard, but you're helping other teams too. You want everyone to compete at their best so that we are all living up to our potential. So you treat other teams with respect, you help other people when you can, but it doesn't mean that you give empty platitudes. It's actual, real help and real empathy and respect. And that's the basis of gracious professionalism. I like to think that if we lived in a world where every adult had such a strong foundation in these concepts, including gracious professionalism, that the world would be an amazing place. It would be so much better. There would be more justice, and people's lives would be easier. And so I really think that teaching gracious professionalism and instilling that as a core concept in a young person is critical and one of the best things about the FIRST programs.
And I think we've talked about that's why we feel so strongly about being involved in the FIRST programs and being involved at FLL, because that's when we can start instilling the ideas of inclusiveness and empathy and kindness and respect. And if we can do it when they're little and they grow up this way, then we will hopefully have a much better world.
That's right. That's right. So now we're going to talk about some specifics. The FIRST Lego League program often attracts students who are on the spectrum. So kids who might have Asperger's or some degree of autism. And it's a great program for those kids.
Absolutely.
It really is. They can dig deep and learn a lot. But when you have kids with different neurodiversity on a team, you need to really work on empathy and making sure everybody understands that we are going to be inclusive and each of us has our own things to bring to the team.
So important.
Yeah, our own voice. And it's hard often for young kids to internalize that. But if you start from the beginning recognizing it, it will be much easier. I had an experience one year where there was a student who was on the spectrum, and when he was overwhelmed, he would hide under a table. And we all understood that.
Sometimes I feel like I should hide under a table.
That's right. I would like to too.
Yeah.
And I get that. When you're overwhelmed, everybody has a different coping mechanism. And so we went into judging, and it was overwhelming, and that young person hid under the table. And by having discussed everybody has a different reaction with the team before, it made it so that the rest of the team could continue on. This happened during a core values challenge. But also something that's important to know is that you can mention to the head judge that one of your students is on the spectrum, and then they can let the judges in the rooms know. And this is really valuable because often they're looking for each of the students to be speaking and saying something. And if you have a child who's nonverbal, you want to let that be known. It's going to be easier on the student and easier on the judges if we can just explain that. And so don't hesitate to reach out and let the judges know.
And I think that idea of communication within the team,
That's right.
that here's our expectations, communication with the judges, that this is what we're doing and we are working with this child and it's important to work with this child. So I think that that's a really important part, is that communication part.
Yeah, and communication is essential in teamwork.
Right.
Anytime you're going to have a team, it doesn't work well unless everybody is communicating.
Right.
And so in this case, we can take the concept of a team even beyond just our FLL team, but to the whole FLL community. And so we as coaches need to be communicating with everybody, the parents, the students, etc. And so let's think of this as a community, and communication and inclusion, teamwork and empathy, they all drive towards gracious professionalism.
They do. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I know one of the big things that you and I talk about a lot is, especially we have 5 teams.
That's right.
And we have 50 kids in a room. And one of the issues that we talk about a lot is girls.
That's right.
Especially young girls on teams, kind of those 4th graders. And we know statistically that it's really, really important to get girls engaged in STEM. The younger, the better.
Yep.
And if we can kind of get them before that middle school age, that they're a lot more confident.
That's right.
To stay in STEM. And I've seen that with my own daughter.
Mm-hmm.
We engaged her when she was super little. And that confidence that we instilled when she was little has held her now to be an engineer, now that she's in college.
Right. And so ways that we can help with the gender disparity in STEM is to make sure that we are supporting young girls and their interests in it. Mm-hmm. And there's a number of different ways we learn to do this. Right. So one is role models. Mm-hmm. So having adults, when you're looking for a professional to talk about a research project, it's also good to look for both men and women.
Right.
So that you can show that everybody has a place in these roles.
Right, exactly.
And then another really important thing that we discuss and we put a lot of thought into is the composition of our teams.
We do.
And it really depends a lot on the personalities of the people on the teams, both young men and young women.
Right.
And sometimes we choose to have an all-girls team because we think that will make it easier for them to find their voice, especially if we have a group of more introverted girls.
Right.
And then other times we make sure that we have a mix of girls and boys, especially as they're getting older.
Right.
When they're in, say, 8th grade, it's great to make sure that they have learned to speak up, the girls
right.
and the boys, and that they're listening to each other
mm-hmm.
and not speaking over each other.
And I think that that's one of the things that we do really structure when we structure our teams, but then when we're working with each teams, and especially with our FRC mentors, that we talk a lot about making sure that everyone is heard. That, when we're brainstorming, that everyone has a chance to talk about that brainstorm. Everybody has an opinion, and that we allow and we respect everybody's opinion. We don't always have to agree, but we're going to be kind in that, and we're going to respect that. And I think especially there are girls that we do need to have those teams that are all girls, because they need to gain that confidence.
That's right.
But we've had several successes with girls that were maybe more introverted and needed that all-girl team, but by the time they were in 7th and 8th grade, we put them onto a co-ed team, they were leading it, they were spectacular.
That's right, and it's really satisfying to see that growth. And that's one thing that's really satisfying about being an FLL coach. Mm-hmm. And one thing I do want to back up and say is that because we coach as part of an FRC team, right. we are purposeful, and we have the high school students who are on FRC also mentor our FLL teams. Right. And we pick a diversity of students from our FRC team so that we're also showing that different role models And it's great because 4th to 8th graders really like working with high school students.
Oh, they'd much rather talk to them than us.
That's right.
Any day.
That's right. Well, they're way cooler than we are.
Clearly.
So those are some of the considerations we've had when composing teams. But Dawn, maybe you could talk a little bit about interacting with parents.
So I always think about having people's children and being able to teach people's children and being able to speak into people's children's lives is a real privilege. And I want to treat it as such. I want to treat that as a privilege, which means that I need to come alongside the parents. That doesn't mean always that the parents know best, but that does mean that we need to have communication with them. And one of the best ways that I know about that is to have a really pretty good idea of how you want to run your FLL teams. Yep. And talk through things like the core values, have ideas on how we do make up teams, so that we are very firm and confident in how we're running our FLL program.
I think it comes exactly back to communication again.
Right.
By having open and honest communication with the parents, that these are our goals. Our goals are to engage their students in STEM, and so that they can learn about robots and be excited to learn about technical skills, but also that there's a piece of growing a person and supporting them in growing these characteristics of inclusion and teamwork and empathy and gracious professionalism.
Right.
And so if they know from the beginning that this is part of what we're interested in, and it's not about getting first place at the competition. It's about learning and having the students having that aha moment for themselves.
I love the aha moment.
Exactly. So that communication with the parents is really important.
And so one of the really easy practical things that we do is that we have a parents meeting, and those parents have to come. If you want to have a kid on our program, you have to come to our first meeting. And we talk through all of these ideals. We talk through the expectations of the students, and we also talk through our expectations of our parents. But we also put the parents through some paces, and we make them do some core values things. And we talk through, we value everybody's opinion. You can't take that, Lego out of your kid's hands, because that's what they do want to do. As parents, we're like, let me just help you and fix that. And so we even walk them through what a meeting would look like, and they get to be involved and see what that's like.
That's right.
And I love that. So one of the other things is that they understand the structure of our meetings.
That's right.
And that communication is important in that structure of meetings. Things even to the fact that we're going to make them clean. And the parents can't get their kids until they have, vacuums straightened up. And in our, at Upper Creek, if you clean, you get a dum-dum. So, the parents know from the very beginning that if their kid doesn't have a dum-dum, they don't get to leave. So.
Yeah. And I think by having those expectations, and then we also make sure that they understand our expectations for them at a tournament.
Absolutely.
Because when we're at a competition, some parents want their kids to win more than anything, and we try to make it clear that we want them to show off what they've learned and then do well in the competition, but we are not going to insert ourselves into the process, and we will not accept them doing that either.
Right, and that's a big part of the, I love the kind of the previous core values that said what we learn is more important than what we win.
Yeah.
And so we like to say that a lot to parents. The purpose of this, it's really fun to win, but the purpose is to learn. And in that, we expect the parents to show all of the core values as well.
Right.
And I have taken a parent or two aside at a competition and said, hey, that's not what we're about.
Yep.
And so I need you to step in with me to teach that to our kids. And that's a super uncomfortable position to take a parent aside to say, I need you to join with me in this. And if you can't then let me show you, over here where you can stand and be upset.
That's right.
But I think that communication is really important. But I think that communication has to be previous to all of these things. So
That's right.
We have another parents meeting right before competition where we go over all of these things again.
That's right. That's right. And so there's a lot to being an FLL coach
There
and
is.
to be successful. But you just take it one step at a time. And
Absolutely.
remember these core concepts of inclusion and teamwork and empathy and gracious professionalism, and have those be the guiding principles.
Right.
And you'll be successful. So good luck to you.